Hello everyone and welcome to The Racer's Edge, brought to you in association with F1 Racing Magazine. Well, I'm here in the Summer Hotel, as it's now called. This hotel, you can see the flags behind me, the bunting, lots of Formula One atmosphere right by the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA as it's known on all the road signs around here, and therefore it's very near the racetrack. So a lot of the teams staying here, a lot of the drivers staying here, but it used to be called the Pan Pacific, so it's kind of surprising, I think, when people come here and see the Summer logo there. But that is the local word for togetherness. Is there a better word to sum up Formula One than togetherness? Yeah, I can think of several actually, but anyway, you can see where they're coming from. So thank you to everybody at the Summer Hotel for allowing us to do this show here in their lobby area. Lots going on, lots to talk about. The most, I guess the most interesting issue is we just had an apology from McLaren Electronics regarding Mark Webber's ECU in the Australian Grand Prix. And for those who didn't see the race, who were not around at the time, Mark Webber had all go wrong for him on the formation lap when he had no information coming from the pit wall. He would normally get a radio message saying something like go to setting X in order to maximize clutch pickup, take-up point off the line. He got no information at all. Mind you, in Mark Webber's case, you've got to say, did it make a lot of difference? Because his starts, sadly, have been terrible over the last 2 years, and none of us, least of all Mark or indeed Red Bull, know why that is. But on this particular occasion, no information at all was coming out of the car, and McLaren Electronics, unprecedented I think, but they should be congratulated for doing so. I've actually apologized because there was a glitch in the ECU, which is a mandatory ECU that all the cars run, made by McLaren Electronics as part of the McLaren Technology Centre down in Woking in England. Now, these people at McLaren Electronics do a brilliant job. Peter Van Manen, an Australian, it's got to be said, manages the whole operation, and ever since they've had a monopoly and they've had to work for it to get the tender, generally speaking, there have been very few glitches on the ECU side. In Australia, a new ECU was being used for the first time. That's because lots of additional stuff is appearing on the car, but beyond that, changes to the way the car is being run and being operated. So new ECUs everywhere, and by and large, there were no problems apart from the Webber problem, and indeed there were some issues with the Delta system that the teams use in order to know what speed to run under safety car conditions. Now last year, in theory how it should run is that this happens automatically. It's a pits to car control system. But in Australia, after some glitches were discovered in the build up to the race, it was decided that the teams would notify the drivers if we got into a safety car situation, and they would tell the drivers what Delta to run. And there was also spasmodic appearance of the flags on the display for the drivers on the circuit, blue flag, yellow flag, whatever. So the flag marshals, as good as they were at the Australian Grand Prix, coming into their own in terms of the information they were giving to the drivers. All this comes under the heading, I think, of the first race of the season. Matthew Clayton has just asked a question on Facebook, on our Facebook page, the Racer's Edge. Matthew Clayton has just asked a question on the Racer's Edge Facebook page, whether or not the problem on Webber's car brings into focus the conflict of interest that inevitably occurs when you have one of the team's electronic divisions doing the standard ECU for the entire grid and a problem arising on one of the cars outside the McLaren fold. The main contender for the rights to do the standard ECU was, of course, Magneti Marelli, the Italian company, very closely allied to Ferrari. So my only response to that is that if it had gone to Magneti Marelli and there was an issue, there would be just as much outcry, if not more. And as I say, Peter Van Manen, a very good guy, and I think it's good that they have apologized for this and opened up and owned up to what was obviously a glitch at that first race. We hope there are no more, because it will become an issue if there are more. And on that subject, I think we should just close by saying we did have standard FIA fuel rigs for many years in Formula One, and on several occasions races were won or lost by glitches with those fuel rigs, and it was written off. Yeah, it was a problem with the fuel rig. We didn't get apologies from the FIA coming after each glitch saying the FIA would like to apologise for the problem that occurred in so-and-so pit stop. So as I say, I think McLaren Electronics, good luck to them for apologising and for owning up to that issue. And let's hope from here on in Mark Webber makes decent starts, because it's just getting ridiculous. Front row alongside Sebastian Vettel, comes out of turn one, he's P7, P8, and that's not what the Australian crowds need. That's not what we need. And good job that it's really Mark Webber this is happening to, because he's such a good bloke, and although he's not capable of shrugging it off, he's definitely capable of moving on to the next race and being the good athlete stroke sportsman that he is. The Australian Grand Prix will ultimately be remembered for one thing and one thing only, and that was the brilliance of Kimi Raikkonen in difficult conditions in the build-up to the race, the dry, wet qualifying sessions, and then the race itself, in which tyre management and tyre degradation became very much the catchwords. It was Kimi Raikkonen who did the almost perfect job. I say almost, like it was a perfect job, actually, to extract the best from the Lotus E21, James Allison's fabulous new car, and to win the Grand Prix by enough margin over Fernando Alonso's Ferrari to show that it wasn't just cars here. This was a lot to do with race management and the way you drive. And when Kimi has a great race, there's really only one person to speak to straight away, and that of course is Rob Wilson. And that's because Rob, with the encouragement of the Robertson family, father and son, had a very, very good look at Kimi when he was in Formula Renault, and then identified him as the great driver as he is. And he's been a follower of Kimi and a great believer in Kimi ever since. So this is what Rob had to say when I spoke to him from Bruntingthorpe, where he was just about to begin yet another training day, on this occasion with a young Japanese driver.
Yeah, he just does the job, and there are subtle little things you can see as he's leaving corners, keeping the car just flat for a car length or so, and his direction change, not going for massive high mid-corner speed in the slower corners, just direction change, and very, very supple driver, and a very straight line driver once the manipulation's done, for coming out. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to see. Whether people pick up on that, I don't know.
It was very interesting, I think, in the closing stages of the race when he was certainly under some pressure from Fernando Alonso, who was in pretty good shape with the Ferrari at that point in terms of his tyre situation. And we could there see, I'm interested from your point of view, were you able to see some significant differences between the way Fernando was driving and Kimi?
Well, Fernando has a little bit more energy goes into the car. It's just superb. He's probably doing the second best job in the whole race there. So, yeah, just a little more aggressive Fernando, which is going to work the car a little bit harder. But again, Kimi, fastest lap, a couple of laps from the end, when people were thinking, oh, is he prepared? Is he physically okay for the race? He just showed, once again, let Alonso know, don't even bother trying.
The tyre degradation story was a big one, and I know that you're also a great believer in Kimi's style when it comes to minimising the downsides of tyre degradation, and I say that in the context that it's quite common to hear people say, oh, well, Jenson Button is the world's greatest tyre conserver because he's so smooth, but it's a deeper thing than that, I think, from your perspective.
Yeah, it is. Well, Jenson's rates of input, the way he tells the car what's coming, it's absolutely superb, and that he's a master at. But he tends to be a more traditional driver, taking the traditional lines and just the one-wheel movement going around corners. It's admirable to look at, but he tends not to manipulate the car mid-corner for direction change, and so the smooth driving, but the corners do go on for a bit longer. And of course, if you've got a problem with your car, then if you've got longer corners, that is a longer arc, then that problem is going to materialize over a greater percentage of a lap. Whereas if you get someone like Kimi, Bottas, and a number of other people, where we have very short corners, just don't spend the time going around them, slightly better direction change mid-corner, in other words, then if there's any problem with the car, then it's not going to manifest over quite such a long percentage, high percentage of the lap. It also obviously looks after the tyres for longer because you've got a slightly squarer, flatter car in for the first 3 or 4 car lengths accelerating out of a corner. It's a very subtle little difference.
And you mentioned Valtteri Bottas earlier, his Formula One debut, of course, Esteban Gutierrez and others. How did you feel he compared with the other rookies?
Well, no question. He's I think the fastest of the rookies. Bianchi's looking like he could be a serious player, but for sure, Bottas definitely a man of the future. The Williams wasn't as quick as it should be, so that race was anonymous in terms of the general public. But he's outperformed Pasta there, I think, in that race, and made a couple of fewer mistakes than Pasta. I think that's why at least he got it to the end. It was a good effort in a car that wasn't as fast as Williams were hoping it would be.
Rob, as ever, great talking to you. Great having your insight. I'll let you go. I know you've got some interesting Japanese clients today up at Bruntingthorpe.
We are, yes. We're about to start now. Starting a little bit early today because it's going to fly back out to Japan. It's first time in England. So, yeah, here we go. We're off to work and you're off to Malaysia.
Rob Wilson from Bruntingthorpe. Well, one of the less happy stories of the weekend was that of Vodafone, McLaren, Mercedes. Not a great weekend for them at all, with Jensen almost from the start of the weekend openly conceding that they were going to be in trouble. And as the weekend progressed, it got deeper and deeper and deeper. Sergio Perez really was kind of just one step behind Jensen, so that didn't make a lot of difference either. I guess all we can say is, let's watch this space. Enrique Scalabroni has done some interesting drawings, which you can see on our YouTube channel, describing the difference in the front roll center height between the Ferrari and the McLaren, and have the pull rod front, and the rest of the Formula One grid. We all know that in terms of geometry, in reality, in the way the wheels move and what the suspension is supposed to do, it's a given that pull rod, push rod shouldn't make that much difference. And Enrique concedes that as well in the video, but he does make the point that the front roll center is higher on the Ferrari and the McLaren relative to others. And in certain conditions, when you're putting load on the tires at certain camber angles, that could be significant. Whether or not that's playing a role in what McLaren are going through at the moment, it remains to be seen. And many people in Formula One, of course, believe that McLaren will get it together sooner rather than later, and most people are assuming that it's an issue that's aerodynamic rather than mechanical. But nonetheless, all these little details do add up, particularly if you're trying to maximize a car when it isn't going particularly well. Well, one driver who knows a lot about maximizing a car when it isn't at its best is Valtteri Bottas, one of our debut drivers for 2013 in the Williams F1. Williams looking very good in testing with the FW35, but strangely, a bit like McLaren, that performance went away in Melbourne as FP1 gave way to FP2 and then qualifying. Difficult weekend in which to make your debut driving a Williams, in other words, but nonetheless Valtteri did an extremely good job. If you relate that to the performance of his teammate Pastor Maldonado, Pastor made a mistake in practice and then again in the race. Valtteri pretty much mistake free, although by his own high standards there were a couple of things that he could have improved. Anyway, I spoke a few minutes ago to Valtteri here at the hotel. This is what he had to say. Well, Valtteri, congratulations, you finished your first Grand Prix. I'm sure from your point of view it feels like, well, that was a little bit of a letdown, but I want to talk to you a little bit in detail about that. But first of all, just here we are in Malaysia. How do you feel?
Well, feel good. It was really nice to have the first Grand Prix without any big problems. Of course, we have some issues with the car and we were not where we wanted. But I mean, yeah, it was a nice feeling to finish the first race, and good to be back here soon again on the track.
A little bit of a strange one because you did a lot of mileage last year, so it's not as if Formula One is new to you, but can I just take you back to, I don't know, maybe a few key moments when you got on the flight perhaps to fly to Australia? It would have felt a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure. It was well, special weekend for me. Something, even last year I was there in every Grand Prix, but when you know that now you're actually going to drive on Sunday, and yeah, it was a different feeling and definitely a bit more excited than any times before. So. Well,
you and other drivers use that word excited a lot, and obviously it is exciting, but there's also a sense of responsibility too that comes, and we all say, you know, isn't it wonderful, the teams, 200, 300 people, whatever it is, but there's a lot of guys out there resting on your shoulders now.
Yeah, there is, and yeah, I know that there's big responsibility because at Williams there's more than 500 people in total working just to get the two cars on the track, and then you have the two drivers who in the end do the job. So, but just the support what I've got from Williams has been so good and so nice, and I don't feel any extra pressure because of that, and we're really really working just as a team, and I feel that everyone in our team is as important as anyone. So.
And I guess Friday, from your point of view, was kind of like business as normal. You've done plenty of those.
Yeah.
But it changed maybe in FP2, and all of a sudden, magically, the performance of the car went away as well. You must have thought, what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, everyone in our team was expecting more, and we could already see on Friday that we are struggling. And
but you looked okay on FP1 in terms of the timesheets. But I don't know, what did the car feel like early out on Friday?
Didn't feel as good as in testing, so that's why we were a bit surprised. And we could definitely see a little bit where we were going to be even after FP1.
And what was that? Was just a general lack of grip, or did you feel an imbalance in the car that had never been there?
Yeah, that's correct. It was the main thing was just lack of grip, cornering grip, and by that way we were also not working the tires really well. We were not putting enough energy in the tires, so the car there was no one big balance problem. It was just basically lack of grip, and that boosts all the problems in the car.
But when you're in FP1, where do you draw the line between saying, well, the track's green, it's slippery, it's a semi-road course, and actually establishing that you've got a problem? Did you know by the end of FP1 that you had a real problem?
Well, looking at the times a little bit, yeah, because I knew how much there is in reserve, and I saw the lap times of some other cars, and you could say that it's going to be tough.
And then FP2 underlined all that. So that was a frustrating afternoon, really. And how much were you playing around with setup in that session?
A lot. We were working really hard to try to understand what are the problems, and we were doing a lot of changes, and we were planning a big setup change for the FP3, but unfortunately it became wet, so we didn't really manage to try the car in the dry.
When you say big, of course what we have seen in the testing is that you've run two distinct shape of side pods, if you like, and it appeared that when you went to the upgrade, if that's the right word, things had really picked up. You got a lot of additional grip on fast corners. Is that, when you were saying a big setup change, is that what you were looking at, actually a side pod revision for Saturday?
No, it was other things in the car setup. Yeah. And
anyway, Saturday came along, and it was a weird day for you as well.
Yeah, very difficult first qualifying, and I think also for my race engineer was not the ideal condition. It's really difficult for everyone.
And Jonathan's first race as a race engineer with you, obviously, and in those conditions, I guess the thing is, I just cannot leave the road. I've got to keep this thing on the island.
Yeah, that's always important, especially in the qualifying in the beginning, just to get the lap on the board. And the time was quite limited, the condition was changing, so actually on Saturday in qualifying it came quite good to us. We did what was necessary at that day, so we got through to Q2.
Well, when Jensen went out on the intermediates for the first time in Q1, you at that point I think were in the pit lane changing as well, but there are only about 4 minutes to go.
Yeah.
It was pretty...
I had one lap with the inters, and luckily that was enough to get through. So it was nice and clean lap, but it's really the second lap I felt I was improving a lot. The heat was building up and everyone was starting to work better, and then there was some yellow flags. So that was only that one lap that mattered really.
So how much of that was Valtteri at say 95%, and how much of it was I can't make a mistake?
Well, I think it's difficult to explain, but there is always just a balance, pushing and not making mistake, and ideal, of course, is that you can always push 100% and not making mistakes. But as it was my first qualifying, I needed to be a little bit cautious, especially in the first laps. So there was a bit more in reserve. But,
and as we saw your teammate, how easy it was for him to go off, particularly with the car, I guess is the way it was, as edgy as it was to drive.
It was tough, yeah, especially in the wet conditions. We were really struggling quite a bit, and the car was not so easy to drive. And I think for us and for me, it was, instead of just driving against teammate, it was mainly driving against the weather, because sometimes it was difficult to keep the car on the track.
And in that sense, just pressing pause in some ways. Walking up to your end of the pit lane and looking at your garage area, it was kind of free of people. It looked relatively calm, and I mean, if you'd been driving for McLaren, for example, making your debut in Melbourne, it would have been a different story altogether. So in that sense, you were able to live in your own world, if you like, and work with your own guys who you knew well.
Yeah, it was actually that's something what I saw, that we work really well to keep the peace to the driver, because the whole weekend I could really focus really well on the driving and nothing else. So it was quite nice and quiet, and really there was no distraction or anything. So
how was it going to bed Friday night, knowing you had 2 more qualifying sessions to come and you were going into Q2?
Well, I was just looking forward for the next day, and it was a good feeling to wake up on Sunday and know that today is the Q2, just another chance of opportunities, and then it's the race.
Did you feel like a Grand Prix driver in terms of walking in, autograph signing, a lot more attention than you've ever had before in your life, I would guess?
Well, I don't really feel any different. Of course, you know that you're driving it as a race driver, but it's just all the things what has came with it, a lot of autographs and stuff. It's been all positive so far. I mean, I've only heard good things from the fans, and everyone's just giving a lot of support.
So let's talk about Q2. You weren't really planning, of course, to make it through to Q3. I wouldn't have thought the way the car was going, but what sort of lap did you get in Q2?
Well, of course we were aiming. Of course you want to get through, and in those conditions you never know what's gonna happen. So yeah, we started with intermediate tires, and not a great lap. I think everything was again building up. The track was getting better and better, and then got a call to come to the pits to pit for the super softs, and it was a bit of a gamble, because I think maybe one more lap in the end and it could have been faster than the inters, but by playing safe, staying with inters, we could have possibly get quite close to top 10, but not sure if we've gone through. But it was a gamble, and unfortunately this time it just didn't really work.
So then the race, and it was pretty clear that if it was a dry race from where you were, you had the choice either of starting on the super softs or finishing on the super softs, I would guess. So how did you weigh those options up on what you were going to start?
Yeah, we chose to start with the option, and then we tried to do 2 long runs with the prime tire. So actually we were just planning to stop, but we saw in the option run that with high fuel we were just sliding the car a lot and destroying the tires, so we needed to go back to 3-stop, and yeah, that was in the end the way to go with our car. It was just a bit too much scrapping the tires, and
the implication is that if you'd started on the medium, maybe you could have done a 2-stop and then effectively, and then a sort of splash and go on the
possibly,
super
but
soft.
difficult to say how the tires would have behaved, because it always, when you have that extra fuel in the first stint, it just puts so much more stress on the tires, and you slide a little bit more, and it's easy to grain the tire.
I was watching you get into the car in the garage to go out onto the grid, and again, amazingly calm and relaxed. It looked like a test session in Barcelona almost. What was it like inside the helmet?
Well, I was very, very confident and not like really nervous at all. Just really looking forward for the race, and yeah, all calm and no problems.
And you made a good start.
Yeah, it was okay. First lap was good. Made some positions and kept the nose clean. The first corner was really tight. Actually, there was some. I think we nearly touched with some cars, but that's just how it is in Melbourne always, I guess.
Did you go into the race thinking I'm going to brake early into the first corner, come what may, and just stay out of trouble, or did you just play it by ear?
Well, I had in my mind all the time that it will be important to stay out of trouble, because it's still the first race, and it's a long race, and anything can happen. So.
And did Hulkenberg not starting help you at all in terms of where you were on the grid? Did that free things up in terms of space?
Not sure. I think, of course, we gained 1 position, but in the end, it was still everything was really packed in the first corner. Yeah,
and I've got your race lap times here, Valtteri. It appears if you had some slight glitch relatively early on in lap times. Tell us about that.
I
You
think
did
it
a
was
38 on lap 4.
Yeah, lap 4. Yeah, that was my own mistake. I was defending position for turn 1.
And who was that with?
I think I had maybe Verne or Gutierrez behind me.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I was DRS. The DRS was enabled, and I was also full curse. So yeah, maybe it's, you could say, the rookie mistake. I just arrived so much quicker to the turn 1 than any laps before, so locked up the front wheels and went a bit wide. So that was really the only mistake of the race from my side.
And just to finish that point, at no time of the weekend, I guess, would you ever have run in with the car like that, with full KERS and DRS enabled? Or would you have done that on Friday?
Not with high fuel, no.
No, not with high fuel?
Yeah.
So you got to the braking area and you were...
Yeah, that was a bit too late. So.
Did you go onto the grass then? Or?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Bit of rallying.
What did you say to yourself?
Well, of course, it's not ideal. But then, you know, the race is long. You just need to forget that mistake and know that next time if you have full KERS, DRS, brake a few meters earlier.
And the next little bit, run down to turn 3, you're feeling if the car's been damaged in any way, I guess, or were you sure that it was all okay?
Yeah, because there was no bumps or anything. It was just a bit of on the grass, and I knew it was okay. So.
And then the race itself, you're constantly adapting to the lighter fuel load, obviously the tyre degradation as it's coming in. Tell us about the race. Under the heading of, it's more difficult to drive a difficult car than it is a great car.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the tires in this race. We are struggling quite a bit, and always when I tried to push more, I could really feel that we were losing the grip, losing the tire. So we needed to manage all the time, and especially in some of the racing situations we had, it was difficult to defend and difficult to try to attack, because you knew that once you're going to push 1 or 2 laps, you're going to struggle in the end of that stint.
So you're constantly holding yourself back, in effect?
Yeah. Kind of, yeah.
And what was it like when the leaders started to approach and you were getting radio messages about that? How much room did you give them, and how much did that take the rhythm away?
For sure it disturbs. It's not ideal. You also always lose some lap time when you need to get the cars past you. So it's not nice, and obviously we would prefer to have a car that at least stays on the same lap with the leaders. Because that's what we want to challenge them, not just to try to get away from them.
You said many times we've chatted, and you said that Finns in general don't talk very much, and if you haven't got anything to say, you normally don't say it. But how much radio transmission was going on during the race between you and, I presume, Jonathan?
Yeah, well, Jonathan gave quite a bit of information for me, but I don't need to always reply. I just, yeah, so basically if I don't say anything, they know all is good. And they were asking some tire info at some point, and then I gave some feedback.
And does it annoy you if Jonathan or the radio comes in at the wrong moment, or are you impervious to that?
Well, we always try to plan to some certain corners where we use the radio, so you kind of expect it, and we always plan a corner that has a long straight after, so you have time to process and time to reply.
Carl Gaydon and the boys seem to do a good job with the pit stops.
Yeah, pit stop went well. I think from my side also, no any surprises. Quite clean and really good job from the mechanics in the pit stops.
And again, one could say, as a rookie, perhaps that's one of the sensitive areas. But I guess you've done quite a lot of that by the time the race started.
In wind testing, we did quite a bit of always. Nearly after every run, we did like stop in the box and just practicing. Because you need to be really precise where you stop, and there's also quite a bit of lap time you can lose or win in a pit stop.
I think you got did you get a speeding fine?
Yeah.
When was the speeding fine?
FP1, yeah. That was.
What happened there?
Oh, my mistake. I thought my speed limiter was on, but it wasn't. So I saw it quite quickly that we're going a bit too quick, and got a bit of fine there. So
how
lost
much?
My salary of the year.
Well, how much was that? Now we all know.
I think it was 2,800 euros.
And you have to pay that yourself?
Yeah.
Valtteri. And as the race wore on, how did you feel physically and mentally?
It was a long race, definitely. Something never experienced before, especially when you have the adrenaline and you're really focusing, trying to do your best. It takes a lot of energy, especially mentally. So. And
particularly in a difficult car and difficult conditions, as we're saying.
Yeah. So not easy, but I didn't have any issues.
Well, your last phase of the race looked very consistent. I mean, taking into account, I presume, quick cars coming past or whatever, but you seem to be right there in terms of where you were. And your fastest lap, actually on that last stint, was very good, wasn't it? 30.8, 30.6 it says here, 30.8, yeah.
Yeah, our last stint was not that long, so, and there was quite a bit of gap behind and front of me, so in the beginning of the stint I could really manage the tire quite well. And then in the end of the stint, when I saw that there was less laps to go, then I just tried to push and get everything out of the tire. So I think the last stint was not too bad, and it's so much easier for the tires as well when you have less fuel in the car.
Well, if you put your fastest lap alongside some others in the race, it actually looks quite impressive. But I don't know whether we should read anything into that. I mean, what are your conclusions on that?
I think it's always difficult. You don't know the strategy, position. I mean, the situation, if someone is blocked behind someone, you just cannot do the lap time. So
yeah, a 30.6 though puts you quicker than Paul di Resta, 30.8, quicker than Gutierrez in the Sauber, 31.4. It puts you about with Romain Grosjean in the Lotus F1. So that, in that sense, you must feel that's not too bad.
Yeah, on the paper, but I think still the fact is we didn't have as quick car as Sauber or Force India or definitely Lotus. So I think the lap time was mainly because of difference in strategy.
How did you feel as the checkered flag came out, and how was Jonathan, and how was the team?
Well, everyone said good job. First of all, finishing the race, and I think everyone, the job that I did, everyone was quite positive, and just.
Yeah, but how did you feel inside?
Yeah,
good.
Just that one mistake was. I do remember that, but it's something I just need to learn from it, and I'm sure I won't make that kind of mistake again. So.
Did you get to pass anybody else in the race once that mistake had occurred in a clean pass?
I think at least lap 1 I passed Verne or Ricciardo into turn 13 in the inside, and then had some battling with Maldonado. I think one time I defended, and also Gutierrez tried to overtake me once, and was a bit of fighting, but never really could catch someone and attack. We were just a little bit too much behind.
Speaking of Gutierrez, he was pretty quick when it started to rain in practice, and then had that quite big shunt. Did you see that shunt when you were running as well? Did you see that on TV? Or and was that a warning bell?
As a replay, I watched some videos of the qualifying. Yeah.
At the time, in the garage, when you were in the car?
Yeah, I think I was sitting in the car and they were playing it. Yeah, I saw it there.
Because that was quite impressive, and as you in your situation, I guess you might have thought, yeah, wow, you know.
Yeah, I think that's something what can happen to everyone.
Yeah.
That AstroTurf exit in that corner, if you hit it in the wet, it's really difficult to catch it anymore. So I had some big moments as well, and maybe sometimes I was a bit lucky also to get away with those, but it was tricky condition for everyone.
How did you handle that bit of road where it was painted over, it was black painted over the white, I think turn 12, where it was so slippery in the wet? What was the car doing there when you...
Well, it was quite snappy, and it was tricky. But, you know, once you do the first outlap and you feel all the lines, feel the grip, then you just know it's coming, you know, every lap that at that point the car is gonna slide, so you just need to do what you need to do for that, put the car a bit more straight or you know.
So that was that, and you could wake up Monday morning, first Grand Prix behind you. Nothing brilliant from the team's point of view, but from your point of view, a very good job, a job well done.
Yeah, I think I can be quite satisfied. First Grand Prix, for me, no big surprises. Everything went quite smoothly. So from my side, it was okay. But yeah, as a team, we really need to do better, and everyone was quite disappointed because we were expecting so much more. We were expecting to fight for the points, and we were quite far away. So now it's new weekend. Again, we're going to do a lot of things in the car, and I've heard some good things that we found some hopefully found some.
Because by the end of Spain, the Spanish test, you must have felt we were in at least the Force India area, if not a little bit higher.
Yeah, it looked like we were maybe quite close with Sauber Force India, so somewhere on the edge of top 10, maybe just inside. So
Sepang's a great circuit.
It is. I really like it. Last year was really nice. It's so wide and there's nice fast corners and.
Well, those nice S's, turn 5, 6 around there.
Really nice.
Looking forward to seeing you there.
Good track for Formula 1 cars, definitely.
And then down the hill, towards the end of the lap there.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Where Perez made that mistake when he could have.
Yeah, he was
won.
catching Alonso,
Yeah. What do you think about Kimi's win?
Nice job, really impressive. He's, I think he's going to be very, very strong this year. And he just showed again everyone who he is and how good driver he is. And that package, Kimi Lotus, seems to work very well now.
And you're not saying that just because you're a Finn. You're saying that because you really rate Kimi, and you always have done, right?
Yeah, I always rated Kimi. I think everyone knows how good he is when he's at his best. So, but for sure, he's a Finn and I'm Finn, so maybe a little bit that also.
Did you speak to him at all after the race? Have you spoken to him?
Didn't see him, no.
And did you speak to him much in Australia?
No, just a few words really. So I think everyone was quite busy, and I didn't see many drivers out there, to be honest.
Well, you saw Mika Häkkinen.
Yeah, he came to see my first Grand Prix, and it was really nice to have him watching it.
And what did he say? I saw you chatting before Q2 in the garage or in the motorhome area. Does he offer advice? Usually
some general. He says always that he doesn't want to advise too much because he knows that I will do well, and he always says that you will be fine, and you're a big boy, you don't need too many advices.
Well, that's the best advice you can get in many ways.
Exactly, gives you confidence. So.
Yeah. Well, Terry, thank you so much for your time, and we'll be watching this weekend. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I'm still coming off a high from that Australian Grand Prix, working for GPTV. For those not familiar with that, it's a great production station that basically does the Australian and Singapore Grand Prix, a little bit like Silverstone Grand Prix in Silverstone TV in England, working with Louise Goodman in the pit lane and the paddock area, with Neil Crompton and the boys, Bob Constanduris in the studio. And well, we did about 8 hours of live TV for 4 successive days, and I think between us, Louise and I did about well over 100 interviews with various people, most of them Formula One drivers. One of the fun bits was talking to the drivers while they were signing autographs by the autograph area at the entrance to the Formula One paddock. That's a unique part of the Australian Grand Prix, just the geography there. The fans can get right up close. And it's interesting watching the body language of the drivers and the key F1 personnel as they move over to that wall, and perhaps don't even move over to that wall and just give it a miss and walk into the F1 paddock. Adrian Newey was particularly good, I thought. Got out of the car. He's not the most outward of people, and yet he was quite happy to go over to this big grandstand of fans and sign autographs and talk and really get into it. Felipe Massa, exceptionally good. Nico Hulkenberg, very good. There was one driver, my job actually was to go up and chat to them while they were doing this live, and most of them were very, very responsive to that. There was one driver, I said, can I have a quick word? And he said, yeah, okay, quick. And so I asked him a question, and then I had a follow-up question, and he said, that's 2 words, that's 2 questions, and just walked away. So some drivers have it and some don't, and it's probably my fault. I should have said, can I ask 2 words? But anyway, there you go. That's what doing television is like. But GPTV, just a superb operation. Really enjoyed that. And for all the support races out there, we did a lot as well, I think, and brought the 60th anniversary of the Grand Prix to the fans in a way that perhaps wouldn't have happened without GPTV. So big thanks to Tim Jardine and everybody at Z Space, the production company behind that, for making it all happen. Thanks very much for all your support for the Racer's Edge so far. We're gathering momentum with every passing day. Obviously, we're doing the show on the road at the moment. Here I am in Malaysia at the Summer Hotel, but equally we're working hard as I speak on the new studio in Teddington at at Haymarket Publishing. That's going to be brilliant when we get that up and running as well. The support, as I say, has been amazing, and keep it up. Our YouTube channel is going exceptionally well, and I'd like to thank, as ever, the F1 poet Ernie Black. And I've got to read his poem out because I should have done it at the Australian Grand Prix. It's a bit embarrassing because it actually mentions yours truly, so I'm not quite sure how to get to that bit, but I'll do my best and read the poem as he wrote it. Welcome all to the Racer's Edge. F1's best to you we pledge. Let's look forward to a brand new year and kick this new season into high gear. Welcome Peter Windsor as our guide and host and keeps us informed from coast to coast. We'll take a look back at the season that was and all the events that caused quite the buzz. We'll discuss the rule changes for 2013 and try to make sense of what they'll mean. We've got phenomenal guests from the world of F1 with many great features that won't be outdone. With reviews and previews from race to race, we'll keep you informed of the championship chase. Scarbs will be here from time to time with answers and sketches which are simply sublime. Drivers signed and much pursued, and driver contracts not renewed. On the season ahead we have our sights set. Car launches and tests have fans breaking a sweat. We welcome new faces like Chilton and Bottas as teammates and rivals sit up and take notice, and a fond farewell to HRT, who will not return due to bankruptcy. We will keep one eye on Checo Perez, the other on Lewis and what his Twitter feed says. Will this be the year Ferrari will win, or again left wondering what might have been? Will Newey's pen be Red Bull's sword? Will the RB9 yield Vettel's reward? Will Lotus improve and finally break three? Will they have what it takes to crack the top three? With Paddy Lowe now off on gardening leave, what might Tim Goss have up his McLaren sleeve? The head games have started in a bid to be best, whilst designers keep secrets close to the chest. It's a strategic match to stay one step ahead between the lines of what is unsaid. It's a whole new season in Formula One, unpredictably teasing and bound to be fun. We'll cover it all and do our best, so take a seat and be our guest, as sharp as a blade and touch as a sledge. It's the F1 show, the Racer's Edge. Thank you very much, Ernie. Good stuff. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to read all of those out. They're a bit embarrassing, a bit self-congratulatory, which we don't want on this show at all. But Ernie, I gather, the F1 poet, is going to have his own book out online, so watch that space. Good stuff. Right, I think that's about all we have time for this show. We have had a few sound issues with these initial first episodes of the Racer's Edge. Don't give us a hard time over that, because don't forget I'm taking very, very lightweight, small equipment with me on these flyaway races, and in theory when you plug in a preamp it should work perfectly, but if there's a buzz that you can't get rid of, it's frustrating to say the least. And I know that if we had 3 weeks to sort the problem, or even 2 days to sort the problem, we could do it. But when you go from country to country, it's not easy. And what we're surmising here, I'm interested to know if any of you have an opinion about this, is that although here in Malaysia we use a 3-point plug and it's 240 volts, in England actually we operate at just under 240 volts, and here we think it's actually on 240 volts. And if you've got a preamp that is, or an amp that is built to English spec, it does produce that little bit of hum. Not much we can do about that in the short time frame that we had, but nonetheless I hope you've enjoyed what we've been able to put together for you here. Look forward to talking to you hopefully after the race, possibly in Malaysia. I'll let you know by posts on Twitter, or indeed back in the United Kingdom. Until then, take care and thanks for watching.